So in this screenshots, we're taking a very interesting look at an actor who I considered the most underrated method actor of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. I know it's going to be controversial, but let's spell it out for you who only know of Robert Blake as the alleged murderer of his scandal-ridden wife a few years ago. Now, Robert Blake has been part of the Hollywood scene on and off since he started as a youth in many youth-oriented roles, including The Little Rascals, Treasure Sierra Madre, and different styles. Now, he ended up being a very strong character actor in movies and television, and his feature roles at the start included, everything from the Purple Gang, Town Without Pity, Ensign Pulver, Greatest Story Ever Told, and the Richard Boone Show. The big role that he was supposed to get, he was offered a role on Bonanza. He was supposed to play the Michael Landon character, and unfortunately he didn't get it. It was a bad career decision. He basically turned it down. He felt he might have been typecast for the role. Now, his big breakthrough, of course, was his performance as Perry Smith, the one of the two serial killer or the thrill kill murderers in the real life case that had inspired the Truman Capote movie In Cold Blood. Capote's version of A Cold Blood had non-fiction style with fictional elements, and the movie itself reflected Blake's what I call anti-hero style. Now, Robert Blake could be best to be described as sort of like the precursor to Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Very intense, very direct. The Perry Smith character in Cold Blood should have won him a Best Actor Oscar. He was snubbed in connection with the Rod Steiger vehicle in the heat of the night. But Blake in every scene there had a style. Once you watch him, you couldn't forget. He just chewed up scenery left and right. Now, this role led to various other, starring roles, successful roles. But he showed up on television a few years later as a refit in a refit of the Thomas series that starred David Janssen, something called Beretta. Now, Beretta is probably one of the most popular crime drama shows of the 1970s, especially in Canada. Was shown in regular viewing on the old CHSJ, the CBC network in New Brunswick, and his fan base was so heavy. Emmy recognition also came for him, Golden Globe, and he was considered also a great talk show guest. He would speak his mind. He was always ready to give his opinion on Hollywood, the dark side of Hollywood, and he became fascinating to TV and movie fans because, that tough man image combined with intelligence. Now, any actor, there's a signature role any actor has, and for many of my generation, they believe that when he decided to take the Jimmy Hoffa role on in Blood Feud, which was a TV movie that looked at his battles, especially with Robert Kennedy during the mafia hearings back in the late 1950s into the early 1960s. Only one person could play Jimmy Hoffa, and that was Robert Blake. Now, the performance was so good, if that was released as a big screen movie, he definitely would have won the Best Actor Oscar. But it stands out because there's scenes in there that basically show Hoffa's personality as told by Robert Blake. A very, very, very direct interpretation of the whole situation. Now, as years went on, he became a little bit more entrenched in his own personal problems. His last big role was the David Lynch part, the Mystery Man part in David Lynch's Lost Highway. A very, very over-the-top performance as well. He looked like a combination of death and an evil angel at the same time. Now, here's where it gets confusing. I'm not going to touch on too much. He was accused of murdering his scamming wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley, in a not say a carjacking, but a car incident outside a bar. And I'm not going to go over the aspects of this case because it's been done to death in the media. Because you have to understand, the tabloid media has been fascinated with Robert Blake through the years. Have sold millions and millions of National Enquirers. 2020 just did a 2-hour recap of the Robert Blake years. Barbara Walters, the famous interview. Piers Morgan, the famous interview. And he's basically said many years, if I had wanted to kill her, I wouldn't have done it as sloppy as it was done. He said I would have hired people to do it. Now, did Robert Blake kill his wife? Not for me to say. Now, was Robert Blake one of the best actors of all time? Yes, I consider him at least in the American scene top 20. Not say it's a lost career, but he gave heart and soul to every role he was in. Would he be a person to be looked up to or to be celebrated to a level of Tom Hanks or Robert Redford, all these big stars? No. He played himself. He took the best part of himself and put it in every role. Now, if you have a chance to see the Robert Blake character roles, In Cold Blood would be a good start. But I must warn you, In Cold Blood looks at the dark side of criminal elements, obsession, mental illness, abuse, which causes people to become serial killers. It's not for everybody. And being in black and white, I don't think any of the millennial generation would dig it. But like for my generation, the 50 and overs, it still stands out. And it's a better movie than people give credit for. And John Forsythe as well has a great co-starring role in there. And the supporting cast again is tremendous. Even Will Geer is in that movie. So it's a great team effort of actors. So on this Sunday afternoon, if you're looking back at ABC This Week, the 2020 special, please take this in consideration, listen to it. Don't really judge a book by its cover. Like I said, it's not for me to judge if Robert Blake is a murderer because, you have to walk a mile in somebody's shoes. Look at Chris Benoit. He murdered his wife and child, but he was suffering from mental illness. Does that discount the work he did as a wrestler, one of the best wrestlers of all time? No. Sometimes people make choices or decisions, or do not make choices or decisions, or those have been thrust upon them. There's many people out there that think Robert Blake has been railroaded by Hollywood because he has enemies in Hollywood, especially those in the Hollywood Mafia, but that's a podcast for another time. So, hope this finds you well. Keep your stick in the ice. Bye.